Oh, can you play something good?
Dead Mouse is on. The man is terrible.
We just got back from the biggest high-end audio show in the world, Munich High-End, and as always, it was an exciting and very fun trip both in and out of the show. And this year there weren't as many new releases as there were in previous years, but still a few exciting things to talk about.
Yeah, there were. I was very surprised by a couple of things that that weren't even on my radar that were very surprising. In particular, I was very impressed by the new Meze IEM, the budget one, the Meze Alba. I say budget. We didn't know how much it cost at the time, and many of us were sort of guessing that this would be a considerably higher priced IEM.
Yeah, they kind of just had a load of people try it and just say, how much do you think this should cost? And people were guessing 800,000, that kind of range.
The retail price will be 150.
150? What?
It sounded very good. It sounded mostly normal with like some U-shape to it, right?
Yeah.
And this is an IEM that it has those same characteristics that many high-end IEMs have as well. So it's a budget single dynamic driver IEM that has what we would call sort of the subjective goodness, or some people refer to this as technicalities, of IEMs that cost considerably more. So that was a impressive demo. But then I was not so keen on the Meze 105. We got to try their new open back, but you liked it, right?
I liked it quite a bit more, yeah. Taran liked it as well. I think you weren't so keen. They described it as basically trying to be something in between the 99 Classic and the 109 Pro. And to me, that's exactly what it sounded like. And it's priced that way as well. It's not going to be for everyone, but I like the fact that it is ever so slightly less bright than the 109 Pro was. It's not quite as technical, it's not quite as neutral, but the 99 Classics were too warm for me. So this slotted in quite nicely, and I'm looking forward to getting some more impressions of those once I get them at home.
And we got a chance to talk to Antonio Meze, the founder and creator and the namesake behind Meze Audio. And he is, of course, a delight to talk to. If anybody has an opportunity to chat with him, definitely do so. He's one of my favorite people in audio, and he has a particularly unique perspective on all this stuff that was really great to see and to hear about. And maybe people don't realize this, but for him, the big thing about product development is that he wants his products to sort of instill a sense of joy in the user, and that can come in many different forms. And over time, he feels that people will sort of build an attachment to the products, an emotional attachment to them, whether it's to do with the sound quality or whether it's to do with the unique sort of build, and really all of it sort of flows together. From trying to bring that feeling of joy that people have with the products that they use. And I think that's really cool because we do this in so many other areas, and that's something that's often missed when we think about, how products get developed and the goals that people set with them.
One thing which I was quite keen on trying, and we didn't know was going to be there, it was just sort of there suddenly, no one knew about it ahead of time, was the HiFi Shangri-La Mini, which it's going to be between $1,000 and $2,000. We don't know exactly how much. It's a new electrostatic headphone from HiFi, which they've put the Shangri-La name on it, so they're clearly quite confident in it, and I was pretty keen on it. I'm liking this a lot. I'm pretty sure I like it more than the Aria, and it could end up costing very close to the Aria. Did you get a chance to try that one as well?
Yeah, I did. It did remind me of the Aria, and I will kind of echo your thoughts there. I did find it to be impressive for the subjective qualities. I do think that some of the frequency response, some of the tenets of the Aria are there with this as well. So it's got a similar kind of sound signature. I don't know if you felt the same way.
No, I agree. Yeah.
To me, for anybody who didn't like the Aria for its sort of brighter characteristics in the ear gain, like in the lower treble and stuff like that, I did find there to be some of that.
Oh yeah, if you're not into that, you won't like this either. But
yeah, but for anybody who liked the Aria or like the egg-shaped style HiFi headphones, this has that kind of characteristic, but like in a just turned up to 11, right? Like it was quite impressive for that kind of sound signature.
Yeah, super detailed. It's an ESAT with bass. They've got a new Energizer coming out with it as well. You won't have to buy them together. It's just a normal Energizer electrostatic headphone, so you can plug it into any Energizer you might have already. But that could also be interesting because there's not many good Energizers that are relatively affordable. So if HiFi can help fix that as well, that's going to be pretty interesting to see. Hopefully we'll have some more coverage of that coming.
I think it's something for people who are uniquely focused on sound quality because the build it's that style of headband that is reminiscent of their lower end models like the HE400 SE and stuff like that. And some people really don't like that headband, so just keep that in mind.
It's not that it's not comfy or anything. I found it perfectly comfortable. Yeah. It's very lightweight. But given as this is going to be, let's say, a roughly $1,500 headphone, it does feel cheaper than that price deserves, exactly. I think. And I do wish that they'd gone with the HE1000 or Sesvara style headband instead. That's just a more premium feeling headband, and it's a shame that they went with the cheaper one. It's not functionally a problem, it just doesn't feel that great.
It's for the people who are uniquely focused on the auditory experience, not the visual one.
The headphone, which I think most people were anticipating and talking about both before the show and at the show, is the Grell OAE1, which Axel Grell, for those who don't know, is the fairly legendary designer behind headphones like the Sennheiser HD620S and HD800S. And so he's now embarked on his own independent venture, making a headphone called the OAE1. And unfortunately, my findings on that were not generally super positive. I think you may have found something fairly similar.
Yeah, so the Grell phone is one where he's trying to do a particularly interesting and unique concept, which is placing the drivers in a very unconventional spot in the headphone, so not where they would typically be with most any other over-ear headphone that I'm aware of. This also means that it's going to be...
Beyerdynamic T1 did something similar, but other than that, I'm not aware of many.
Yeah, so it's a novel concept. It's a unique concept. And for that reason, it's interesting. However, for the way that it fit on my head, it made it so that the sound was very strange. Okay, I'm going to get nerdy for a second. This sounds like... You know how the diffuse field head-related transfer function is the correct sound field for headphones?
Right.
This is like the opposite of that. Yes, it did the soundstage thing. Yes, it did the sort of spaciousness effect remarkably well. And for people who are chasing that, it might be worth considering. I do know some people at the show who said it was the best thing that they'd heard. So, it is something that people are going to be, enamored with or excited by. But for me, it just... The sound profile was so timbrally strange that it sounded like there was a particularly muffled character to a major portion of the ear gain and then just like a ton of treble above that. And as soon as I moved the headphone further back on my head to where the drivers were a little bit closer to my ears in a more conventional sense, it actually started to sound a lot more normal. So this is one that I think it's going to be controversial. I think it's going to be hit and miss, but it is also cool that he's trying something totally different. And so we'll see how this works, and see how the community receives it.
It's definitely an interesting concept, and like you said, there were some people that said that for them it worked fantastically. I have a suspicion that this is going to be a headphone which is going to change quite a lot depending on the listener. It was definitely, as you said, very positionally dependent, and one thing I should mention is that I have enormous noggin syndrome, and so it didn't quite get down as low as I would need it normally on a headphone, so it could just be that for me, that alone, the fact that I couldn't get the headband big enough, was a detrimental factor. Overall, though, my thoughts are probably best summed up by this clip of Zeus.
Z, what did you think of the Grell?
You mean the OAE1? I'll figure it out. I'm gonna figure it out. It's like a puzzle. It's like one of those puzzle blocks that you gotta I haven't puzzle blocked it enough, but it'll eventually be okay. Maybe.
Okay, another product which a lot of people were quite excited about. It's fairly new, not brand new at this show, but something which is very expensive, very high-end, and a lot of people were hyping up quite a bit. The Raal Immanis. What did you think of that?
Not for me, that one. It sounded... to me, basically, it was a perfect indication that, some of these sort of subjective qualities that people look for, it's just coloration in the treble. And I say that not to be dismissive of the people who enjoyed it for what it was, but there was significant coloration in the treble that made it like various different peaks and dips and things like that just didn't work for me and my HRTF. So it was something where I could see the things that people were excited about with it, or responding positively to, but for me those are things that I'm just not at all interested in. I'm not chasing that at all. So it was just one that it just sounded timbrally weird and had a number of sort of fatiguing qualities to it that I couldn't get into. How about you?
So there's two versions. There's the Immanis and the Magna, I believe. The Immanis has 3 ribbons and the Magna has 2. So Raal previously had the SR1B, which was the flappy free-field one, and the CA1A, which was their circumoral design. I quite like the CA1A. These ones, I'm not so keen on the Immanis. It's fine. I didn't dislike it, but I didn't love it either. And the problem is that with a headphone that expensive, I kind of need to love it, or else it's a little bit underwhelming. The Magna, though, the 2-ribbon one, you said that you liked that more, right?
Oh, I still didn't really like that one, but I thought it was less fatiguing than the more expensive one. So it was the more expensive one that I heard first, and that one sounded more weird to me in the treble. The less expensive one sounded less weird, but still weird, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So again, this to me comes down to, it really depends on what people are chasing. If they want the headphones to impart a particular kind of editorialization on the sound, those are worth trying, but it's one that I would have a hard time kind of suggesting people blind buy, because it just is too quirky and unconventional. It sounds very much not normal, and maybe that's a good thing for people, but for me it wasn't.
Yeah, some people are absolutely going to love it for that reason. I was a little bit the opposite way around, where I like the Immanis quite a bit more. The Magna, something about the treble was just not working for me. So I wonder if maybe the multiple ribbon design, which they're going with 3 full range ribbons with no crossover. So they are all operating at the full range, 20 hertz, 20 kilohertz, but with different resonant frequencies. So I wonder if, depending on your ear shape and exactly how you've got them positioned, that's going to play into the HPTF effect and mean that it's going to produce quite a different response on different listeners' heads.
Yeah, it could be. The other thing about those is that they are circumoral headphones, right? They're open back circumoral. They're not the free field stuff. So there is something different about this approach. And I will say, I do appreciate that about them. I appreciate the more sort of conventional mechanical design for that, but then that's also going to come with additional challenges for how the tuning goes, right? So it's just an interesting concept, I suppose.
Definitely worth trying. A little bit mixed for me, but as Andrew said, because the tuning is not normal, some people seem to love that, some people seem to hate it. Give them a try if you get the opportunity to. Speaking of headphones, which seems to vary depending on the listener, is the new Sennheisers.
Oh, the Sennheiser HD620S.
Yeah, so the 620S, that one was interesting because on my head, the treble just didn't work. Something about it was kind of fatiguing and shrill almost. Whereas for you, it worked really quite well, you said.
Yeah, so this is one that we actually have a little bit of an inside track on, because we've had the units in for review. We just haven't been able to publish the review yet. So I've had a chance to spend a lot more time with it than just at the show. And I can confirm that it is one that measures quite differently depending on the head that it's on. So for example, for me, I actually hear it a lot more similarly to how it measures on the Gross system. You might hear it a little bit more similar to how it measures on the B&K 5.28 system. It actually measures reasonably well on the Gross. For the treble, I mean, it has a lot of fine-grained features and quirks. I think actually Sennheiser even published their own Gross data on this, and it does measure kind of like that, right? Like the ones that we have. But as soon as I moved it to a different head, the treble features got really weird. So you might be having that kind of effect based on the pad deformation or, how it's sitting on your head. I found that I actually had no real trouble with the treble. If that makes sense. I didn't have any issues with the treble that were, super glaring because, again, most of those features are fairly fine-grained, and it kind of does indicate that, when people are reading graphs, they need to remember that the fine-grained stuff is far less perceptually relevant than the more wideband stuff. And for the wideband stuff, there are also some quirks. There is a notable forward character to around 500 hertz, which causes what I find to be a kind of like a boxy character to it.
Okay.
I don't know if you found that to be the case at all, but for me, that's the thing that kind of stands out much more than the treble. But I will say it's probably one of Sennheiser's best closed-back headphones, even though I suppose the bar for that isn't that.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, closed-back headphones are quite hard. Although, one company that's actually seemingly done quite a good job was ZMF. ZMF had the Bokeh open, Bokeh closed, and Caldera closed, and both of us liked the Caldera closed quite a bit.
Quite a bit. I wouldn't say that it's neutral at all, and that's fine.
No, well, I don't think ZMF's trying to be neutral. So.
Yeah, and that's the thing, right? Like, we often get sort of stuck in this, chasing neutral concept. But that was an example of a headphone. It's warm and relaxed, but also just really natural and good sounding. Like, warm and relaxed in a great way. Like, not in a way that's muffled or anything like that.
No,
like,
it
sounded
super detailed.
Subjectively, I prefer the tuning of the atrium. These are way more technical and detailed.
Yeah.
And for a closed back, these are crazy.
See, I would take those over the atrium for sure.
So for me, it was actually one of the highlights of the show was the Caldera closed. Keeping in mind that with the ZMF headphones, a lot of it comes down to swapping around pads, and we didn't get a chance to really do any of that at the show. So you're sort of, you're limited to the pad options with show impressions, and you kind of just got to go with what's there, at least in this case. And so I liked the Caldera closed quite a bit.
Caldera closed, I think you said it. It's less neutral, but I subjectively preferred it. I think it's a more technical headphone. It's doing a lot of the, as you said, sort of separation things, and for a closed-back headphone, soundstagey things. I think likely in that case, in large part because the Caldera's got more upper treble than the Bokeh does. It's a little bit airier sounding. Yeah, I like that one more, even though it's a little bit less neutral, but both of those I liked quite a bit. So one particularly interesting thing which we got to do was speak to Final Audio, and we had our ears scanned for a bit of a project that they're working on, where they have, actually the IEMs that I'm using at the moment, some of their true wireless IEMs, they are working on a system where you get your ears scanned. At the moment they're doing it professionally, and we had to sit there for about 10 minutes or so getting it done, but in the future you will be able to use your phone to do the same thing. And they create a custom profile to tune the IEMs to your HRTF. Now, I've had my ear scan, but I haven't got the profile yet. Have you received the profile for your unit yet?
So I did do the follow-up testing where they had applied the profile to a bunch of recordings, and then they had me sort of select which ones I ended up preferring. So they basically had me select A, B, and C for different recordings, and then they do it again. Over and over again. And those differences were so extremely subtle that even sometimes I couldn't even tell if there was a difference. So it's really just like them dialing in the last tiny little 1%. But as far as tuning it to my HRTF goes, it sounded incredible. Like, the recordings that were played to me with that calibration applied it was all the things that I would ascribed to sort of that subjective goodness of headphones. It was all there. So extremely good, clarity for the images, instrument separation, all of that stuff. So I'm very curious to see what they do with that. I think to me, the other big thing with Final Audio was their R&D presentation was so on point when it comes to, knowing what the right thing is. To focus on.
You were
this whole
giddy during that presentation.
Oh yeah.
I mean, normally when a manufacturer invites you to a press presentation, you go, okay, fine, and you go along mostly to be polite. Whereas this one, it was really good. It was fascinating. Final Audio has hired a man who used to be the head of the AES, the Audio Engineering Society, and we haven't seen too much in terms of products that have come out based on his input yet. But just based on that presentation and what you're saying about the IEM profile matching, it seems like they're moving in quite a good direction.
Yes. We'll see how this turns out in practice with their, future products, basically.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that, and I'm looking forward to trying the HRTF matching with these as well. There was also some stuff there which was a little bit less based on scientific evidence and reality. We stopped by the booth of Telos Audio, who had some interesting products, including quantum noise resonators and a few other interesting selections of products. You can get a set of quantum stickers for a few $100s if you're interested.
I don't know what it is.
I can't tell. Pure metal foil audio signal capacitor. power cable.
This is a
It's
cable.
a cable.
Yes.
US 28,000 US.
That's a big power cable.
Yeah.
I mean, that's sort of the disappointing thing with some of these shows is that while on the one hand you see all these really great products and you have a lot of really cool experiences with new gear, there's also sections of these shows that, I mean, I think I described it to you as like the hallways of fools.
The hallways of fools.
Where it's just, yeah, it's just madness all the way down for some of these places. And I don't say that in any sort of like, well, maybe a little bit disparagingly, but like I mean it more in the sense that even for people who believe there are differences in things where there's no evidence to suggest there actually are differences, I don't understand how anybody is expecting to actually hear these differences when comparing this equipment in that environment. To me, that's the crazy thing. Like, yes, I can understand if people believe whatever marketing stories get told to them about a given, product type, but to then imagine that you'd be able to actually tell the difference in this kind of situation where it's like, all these companies have crazy elaborate speaker setups. They have their crazy elaborate amp and DAC setups, cable risers, all the things that you can imagine, And to me, it's like, what about this makes you think that you're going to get, any sense of what's going on with these products? Like, other than just like the speakers,
It's awesome to be able to try these setups, but I've been to some of these where people will say, well, oh, what did you think of that DAC? And I go, I don't know. And they go, oh, what, didn't you listen to it? No, I did, but it was in an unfamiliar room with speakers I've never heard, with a bunch of people chatting around me, I've never heard anything in this system. I don't know what it would sound like if I put an Apple dongle on it. Even as someone who is, into DACs and amps, it's not possible to actually compare stuff there or really get any useful information, because even if you did have those same speakers, you've never heard that room before, and that has a huge impact. So that does make it a little bit tricky. With headphones, it's a little bit easier. And as we were wandering around, there were a couple instances where something which we weren't even aware of at the time just sort of happened to stop by and went, oh, this is one of the best things we've heard at the show. In particular, there was one booth which had the ESLabs ES1A and headphones from Perun. Both of these are electrostatic headphones, which I'd heard of before, but had never actually listened to. And I think it's probably fair to say that both of those headphones were clear standouts of the show for both of us.
This is remarkable. Like, that's good, right?
That's great, yeah.
Yeah, that's extremely well done.
Yeah, and they had them at, I think it was Zavalinka Records or something like that. But basically they had it on this setup, which was the Blue Hawaii, and then they had sort of like a reel tape thing. And so we didn't get a chance to choose our recordings at all, so that's the major caveat with all of this. And we heard it just on that setup. But it was incredible. It was remarkable. And I actually preferred the Perun over the ESLabs thing. I thought it was kind of hilarious that when Taryn picked it up, the cup fell off.
Yeah, Taryn almost immediately destroyed them. And then shortly after, almost immediately destroyed himself on a scooter.
Why have we gone here?
That was one of the highlights of the show for me, is watching Taryn bail on a scooter.
I'm so happy that you managed to catch that on video.
Yeah. But I mean, there were so many awesome things about the show as well. Like, the big thing for, I think, both of us was getting to watch the Stephen Wilson presentation on spatial audio. He's someone who I've admired for his both his own solo content, but then also his work with other bands that are bands that I like, and he's produced some of my favorite albums. So that was just awesome to see. And I won't say that it like changed my perspective on spatial audio, because I've long since thought that that's the future, and that is like the next sort of frontier that everything is kind of going in the direction of. But it was great to see that in practice and get a good rendition. Obviously we weren't in the sweet spot, but like to get a good demonstration of that with his own mix.
Like you said, it's not something that's changed my perspective on spatial audio, because it's kind of the logical conclusion to high-end audio, right? Why not have that if you can do it right? The problem is just that most people can't put 12 different speakers in their living room, or at least their wife would be unhappy about it. But headphones are kind of going to fix that eventually. We've got headphones like the Audeze Maxwell, the AirPods Max, and various other headphones which have head tracking and accelerometers in them. And so a lot of this stuff, and a lot of what Final is working on as well, is solutions to making spatial audio work really, really well in headphones, ideally customized to your own HRTF. And that's kind of the end game.
So we just saw Stephen Wilson giving a demonstration of Dolby Atmos spatial audio in one of the most insane spatial audio setups I've seen, and I think that's the highlight of the show for me so far. That last track in particular, because he did a few different songs, some where he'd taken stuff where it was recorded within each individual instrument on different tracks, and so he had a bit more flexibility with it. Some where there was just a stereo track and he did his best with it, and then there was one which was his own track where it was made for spatial audio from the start, and it's just
I think
it's clearly the next step.
I'm still dealing with the denouement in the pants from that last track. That was something else.
Yeah, that was fantastic.
Well, I do think that there's a lot of problems that come with the, I mean, like, let's just say it, like the Dolby Atmos stuff in spatial audio. It's a little bit in its infancy right now.
Yeah.
Certainly when it comes to being able to evaluate this stuff, and I think that's going to be like understanding what good is when it comes to that is going to be a real challenge. But I do think that with headphones, actually, there is the big thing, as you said, with headphones is that there is a much easier, it's much more accessible than trying to, fit out your living space with a whole bunch of different speakers.
Yeah.
So I think headphones is the natural place for this to be, well, it's the more ubiquitous place for this.
Overall, what would you say in terms of stuff that you tried was the highlight of your show and the most disappointing or worst thing that you heard at the show?
The highlight of the show was something I can't talk about.
Yeah, I'm the same, unfortunately. Won't be too long after this video comes out that you'll hear about it, but that was quite standout.
But of the things that I can talk about, I would say this is something that I think we actually recently talked about it on a live stream. But when I'm doing my, like, let's say, critical analysis search for products that I personally am interested in or would consider for purchase for myself, I have a very different lens for that than I do when I go to shows. And so when I go to shows, I kind of just take that hat off and I think, okay, what is just going to be a fun, crazy, ridiculous experience that I'm going to enjoy? And oftentimes I find the things that I enjoy from these shows are things that are a little bit more on the esoteric side. They're not as, let's say, clinically neutral as what I might enjoy for my own personal listening at home. Because these are kind of just, these products are part of the experience. And you're in that frame of mind where you're like, I'm going to go to a show, I'm going to experience something new. And when you approach it like that, you're able to find enjoyment out of things that maybe you wouldn't traditionally enjoy, or again, for what you might purchase for yourself. At least in my case. This is why show impressions are crap. That's what I'm saying. But with that in mind, again, for me, the things I enjoyed the most were things that I would say probably had some character to them, like the ZMF Caldera Closed and like the Perun electrostatic headphone. So I would say, for the headphones that I tried, it's those two that were the ones that I had the most fun with at the show.
I think that the thing which I was most surprised by and really want to try at home is the ESLabs ES1A. I thought it was a Stax Omega at first because it looks quite similar to it, but that was absolutely excellent, and I'm pretty sure I prefer it over the Stax X9000. It's a lot cheaper than the Stax X9000, so I'm hoping to try that out again. Sounded absolutely fantastic. Who knows, maybe the reel-to-reel setup was doing a lot of the heavy lifting, or maybe they are just that good. But that
Speaking of
good.
Stax, did you get a chance to... What did you think of the new Stax?
Nope.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. That was very trebly in the worst of ways.
Yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot of treble.
I felt bad because I love the folks from Stax, and
the folks from Stax are
the
great.
other setups that they had there were amazing. Like they had the L700 and stuff like that.
L700 and X9000 are brilliant. But those ones are a swing and a miss, unfortunately. Which is a shame, because I so badly want there to be more budget electrostatic stuff. It's a bit of a chicken and egg thing where there's not enough good cheap energizers, so no one makes good cheap electrostatics, but then there's not enough good electrostatics at an affordable price, so no one makes cheap energizers. I'm hoping that this new HiFi Man stuff might be the kind of start of that, but we'll see.
Yeah.
In terms of the most disappointing thing at the show, what was that for you?
Most disappointing for me, I mean, it's hard for me not to say, even though it wasn't the worst experience that I had at the show with a product, I was a bit disappointed by the Meze 105. I was hoping that would be kind of just like a similar kind of character to the 109, or maybe something a little bit more in that vein. But yeah, to me, that one was a bit disappointing. The Grell phone. It's got to be the Grell phone. This is my first time hearing it, and I had high hopes because I really admire Axel Grell. He's made literally my favorite headphones. And so to have it be probably my least favorite experience at the show, or the experience that I didn't like the most strongly, that was disappointing for sure. Again, it could be good. Like in practice, when people actually get the units in hand, people could find that they actually enjoy the sound. I'm just saying, for me, it was very not what I'm looking for, and didn't work for me, basically.
These shows are always absolutely brilliant to try out all the new stuff and all the stuff that may have existed that you've not tried yet, and being able to try all of these different things in different places. There's limitations to show impressions, but having all of this stuff in one place is still a very unique experience. But the thing I always look forward to most about any of these is the stuff that happens outside the show, and there were a lot of friendly faces there, lots of you guys that came up to say hello.
No one ever comes up to me.
I would.
And a lot of close friends as well. And outside, we got up to quite a bit of fun.
Definitely worst thing at the show by far was whatever that ultrasone thing was that we listened to.
Oh yeah, I heard my first ultrasone, so I probably can't hear past 20 kilohertz anymore. That was...
Yeah.
Tile's review makes so much sense now. Good God.
Ow.
What are these? Oh, I didn't know what they were. Okay,
Yeah.
well that explains. All right.
Is it recording? I can't tell.
I'm good. I'm done.
Yeah.
So, bit of a landmark moment. Andrew, you heard a difference in amps.
Yes. I mean, they're tube amps, of course, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a look of confusion. I like that better. This is also on... No, this is definitely more hard-hitting.
Yes.
The distortion profile has to be different between these two.
Oh yeah, definitely.
It has
It's
to-
completely different tube.
Yeah. So I'm hearing something, it's creating something in the treble on this one that I don't like. And it's
Okay.
not on this one. But this is way more dynamic.
Yeah.
So
Yes, I heard a difference in amps between two Cayin amps, both tube amps, and obviously, yes, tube amps, the difference is a tangible one that I would say matters. But it's interesting because we listened to the Sisvara and the Tungsten, the Modhouse Tungsten, off of these two different amps, and you'll have to remind me the names of them because I forget what they are.
It was the HA300 Mark II, and then the new one is the HA170.
Right. So one of them was this big stack one that a lot of people were enjoying because it had a dynamic mode, and it was this very, tight and engaging, grippy kind of sound with the Sisvara. I mean, these are just words, but that's
Ultra
how we
slammy.
Yeah, that's how we were describing them at the show. And same thing with the Tungsten. I think actually we all preferred the Tungsten off of that one. But here's the interesting thing. Comparing it on the other, more flatter one, I think the HA300
300 Mark II.
Yeah. Putting the Sisvara on the flatter one actually to me, it was an experience that I liked more because it actually softened up some of the treble a little bit. And then I was chatting with one of the reps from HiFi Man, because he just had a chance to try it as well, because we thought it was kind of cool. And he said exactly the same thing. I didn't have a straightforward answer as to, which one overall I preferred, but I think I preferred the tungsten with the slammy one and the Susvara with the, smoother, refined kind of character one. If that makes sense.
I was pretty much the same, and I think there was a few of us there that tried the headphones, the tungsten and the Susvara, on those two amps, and it was pretty universal in terms of the views there. I preferred Susvara on the HA300 Mark II. It's cheaper, it's a bit warmer. I didn't feel that was as sort of detailed sounding an amp, or dynamic and punchy, but that tuning just seemed to fit the Susvara better, whereas the other one, it was a little bit too aggressive with the Susvara. But then that aggression kind of suited the tungsten really nicely. And so afterwards we got talking about how we might be able to set up some research on harmonic distortion profile preferences, because that seemingly is something which has an impact. And obviously on many products it's less of an issue. This is something about tube amps where the distortion products are going to be high, and it's a question of what structure of those is going to be most preferable. But it's something which we can simulate and potentially do online. So stay tuned for that, because we might have some stuff coming. But that was quite an interesting experience. I wouldn't necessarily say that I overall liked that new Cayin amp more. I think that it's a more, and I know you hate this word, but a more technical sounding amp. But with the Susvara, it was fatiguing, to be blunt, whereas the tungsten, it suited it quite nicely. So will be interesting to see how that changes if you swap the tubes around, because the tube swaps themselves can change sound quite a lot. But overall, it's not a clear win over the HA300 Mark II, but still quite impressive.
I mean, both of those amps they sounded good, in general, right?
HA300 Mark II,
just a matter of which I preferred.
Brilliant, and it's not that expensive in comparison to a lot of tube amps as well.
The crazy thing as well about these shows is you do get to see the science experiments, right? You do get to see the several $1 million, horn setups and stuff like that are just like absurd. We saw one that was just like the most hilarious, massive horn setup. And there's someone dressed up in some fancy costume, and I'm not a big fan of the horn setups that I've heard. I didn't hate that one, I will say, but it just seems exorbitant and extreme, and I suppose that's the point of Munich high-end, right? But I was most impressed actually with the more modestly priced setups that were there, like the one. This sounds ironic to say, but in the AudioQuest room, I forget the name of the brand of the speakers.
The Golden.
They were kind of just like mid-sized speakers that they looked a lot more unassuming, but they sounded way better than most of the setups that were these, enormous, elaborate things. So, it's kind of a crazy event that you see all aspects of it. You see the snake oil, you see the exorbitantly priced stuff, but then you also see the stuff that is tangibly good in places where you might not even expect it to be. Like, again, to me, it's like, why was the best speaker setup that I heard in the AudioQuest room?
It's they're using all the cables.
I would put those in my apartment.
In terms of the ignoring price tag, but just the best speaker setup that you heard at Munich, what was that for you? For me, it was the YG Acoustics room. I finally got to try some of their top-end stuff, and I've always enjoyed the YG acoustic stuff I've heard, but hearing that was really quite something. What about you, though? What was your favorite speaker setup that you heard at the show?
I honestly didn't like most of the speaker setups. I thought, apart from that one, the golden ear one, and
you quite like the Wilsons, though, right?
So I was gonna say, the Wilsons, they were speakers that I would never personally own because they just sounded so bassy, right? But they weren't like unpleasant for the rest of their response. So I gotta say it, I actually preferred the Wilsons. I did like that they had at the Focal room, but I don't remember the name of the speaker.
I think that was the Maestro Utopia in the Focal room.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, I think folks need to also remember that at these shows, even though they do room treatment to a certain extent, a lot of these speaker setups are not in their ideal conditions. They're in whatever they're able to afford to put together, whatever the brand is able to afford to put together for a booth.
Yeah.
And that's sometimes suboptimal. Like I was going to say, actually, in the SVS room, those speakers actually were impressive especially for the bass. I found them to be very tight and punchy and good sounding. But I also felt like the room was sort of falling apart as a result of them. Like the room couldn't handle, what they were trying to demo.
When we were in there, I actually played a song and got Amrock out, which is a room mode calculator, to see if what I thought was hearing was indeed a room mode or something with the speakers. And yeah, it's square room modes crossing over at the same point, and it was causing some problems. Impressive setup though. It's just that the room is unfortunately a bit of a factor. In fact, I mean, it's not that it's the best setup in the world or anything, far from it, but the setup I've got in the other room I like more than most of what I heard at Munich. And that's primarily just down to the fact that the room's more ideal. And it goes to show that if you are getting speakers, do what you can for the room, because that is going to make so much more difference than spending tons of money on DACs, amps and cables and resonators and lifters and all this kind of stuff. Treat your room, it makes an enormous difference.
Well, it actually makes a difference.
Yes,
as many of those
quite
other
demonstrably.
things
Are you saying that the quantum noise resonator is not going to improve your system, Andrew?
Yeah, I'm gonna take the bet that it doesn't actually make a difference in blind tests. We also, I mean, as far as bad speaker setups go, there were many. Like the room that you could not miss, or the room you should not miss, was one we probably should have.
We got literally dragged into a room, and they had a sign saying, "You can't miss this room." And the guy basically, like, we didn't have a choice but to go in there. We absolutely could have missed that room, quite happily.
Yeah.
You can spend all the amount of money you want on network switches and $1,000 Ethernet cables. It's not going to fix if you've got bad speakers in a bad room.
These events, for me, these days are actually less about the gear and they're more about the people.
Absolutely.
Both the other getting to hang out with other folks who are doing similar things to what we're doing. Some folks from Europe, but also Zeos was there, and it was just fun to hang out with everyone.
It's not going to be fun now.
But it's still fun for me. So, this is Zeos Pantera, the grader.
I am downloading some anime wallpapers as we speak.
Yeah.
And putting a 7 dB bass shelf on everything.
Can you say these for me, please?
These! I was talking about all these!
Your best American accent?
That's great.
Getting a chance to talk to people like Axel Grell, getting a chance to talk to Yermo from Sennheiser, it's Antonio Meze. That to me is what these events are all about. Because for what we do, I mean, for the things that are at most relevant to us, we'll probably get a chance to get them in and review them and spend proper time with them. But what's rare and not something we can as easily do is actually sit down with these people and sort of pick their brain about various different things, or just get a chance to know them and hang out with them and see where their passions are. And you can tell, with all these people that they're doing this because this is for them, a hobby as well. So it's just really nice to see that coming out in person.
They're just as into it as we are. They're not doing it because they're thinking, oh, what can we make a product that's most marketable and it's going to be most financially successful. It's about how can they make
some
something
people
big.
probably are.
Well, I'm sure there's some of them, but
yeah,
these people, it's so fantastic to talk to them because their passion and knowledge is so evident when you talk to them. And it's hard sometimes not to get caught up spending about half the show talking to these people and not actually trying anything. But as you said, that's the best part anyway, so it doesn't really matter too much. After Munich itself, we went over to Poland to go and visit Felix Audio, and that was a fantastic trip. Felix Audio is an interesting company because they work in quite a different way to many audio manufacturers. Every single person that works there is a hobbyist. They are into this stuff. They're not just someone that's been hired because they happen to have the right engineering degree. Part of their interview process is checking out what sort of stuff that person has done in terms of audiophile hobby aspects themselves. It's three brothers that have taken over from their father. They are all, as I said, hobbyists and are going about different projects in different directions. It was fantastic to have a behind-the-scenes look at how they do things, how they produce things, all of it in this small town called Lubliniec in Poland. And we'll have a full video coming out on that soon, so make sure that you get subscribed. I had a fantastic time. It was absolutely fantastic to see so many of you guys there as well. There was a lot more of you this time than last year, and the headphone section itself was a lot bigger. It's kind of getting to the point where the headphone section at Munich is basically a can jam in and of itself, and then you've got all of the other speaker stuff as well. So if you can make it, this is the show to go to, and hopefully in 2025 we'll see a lot more of you there as well. Until then, you're watching the Headphone Show. I'm GoldenSound, that was Resolve, and we'll see you next time.